detective. This is Gemma. I'm Agatha. I'll leave you my number.
Judith Potts is 77 years old. She swims naked in the Thames every morning, writes crossword puzzles for the newspapers, and pours herself a whiskey at exactly 6 o'clock. One morning during her swim, she hears a gunshot from a neighbor's house. She goes to the police. They pat her on the head and send her home. So she starts her own investigation. She recruits a dog walker and a vicar's wife who's clearly dying for something to do with her life, and the three of them start solving murders together while the actual police trail behind looking useless. Samantha Bond plays Judith. You'd know her as Miss Moneypenny from 4 Bond films. The show comes from Robert Thorogood, who created Death in Paradise, and he's been open about his plan. Judith Potts is his Miss Marple the same way Richard Poole was his Poirot. It's the second half of his Agatha Christie project, and it was a success too. It actually set record ratings when it launched. This is the show where the main character enters a village quiche competition to impress her new neighbors and someone dies from eating it. That's how Agatha Raisin becomes a detective. Through a poisoned quiche she didn't even bake. She bought it from a shop and passed it off as her own. Agatha's a retired London PR executive who moved to the Cotswolds, and she's not the lovable amateur detective you usually get in these things. She's vain, she chain smokes, she drinks too much, and she has a terrible taste in men. Ashley Jensen plays her closer to Larry David than Miss Marple, someone who makes you cringe as often as you root for her. The show almost died multiple times. Sky made it as a Christmas throwaway, ordered a full series, then canceled it. Acorn TV in America picked it up. Sky ended up having to buy it back just to air it in the UK. Jensen carried the whole thing for 8 years before leaving to star in Shetland, and without her, the show just stopped. Frank Hathaway is a washed-up PI in Stratford-upon-Avon. Lou Shakespeare is a woman whose fiancé was murdered at their wedding. She takes her recovered savings and buys into Frank's detective agency, and the two of them start solving crimes together with help from their secretary Sebastian, a failed actor. It looks like standard BBC afternoon stuff, easy to have on while you're folding laundry. Except underneath, there's this elaborate Shakespeare game running through the entire production. Frank and Lou's police rival is named Marlow, after Christopher Marlowe. The pub where they drink is called the Mucky Mallard. It's actually a joke about the Dirty Duck, the real pub in Stratford where actors go after shows. Every episode title is a Shakespeare quote. And the casting goes deep. In one episode, Timothy West plays someone called Johnny Falstaff, and West had played the actual Falstaff at the Old Vic opposite his real-life son. The show does this constantly, burying references inside references. John Taylor doesn't own a computer or phone or television. He lives alone writing puzzle books, and he's perfectly happy. Then his identical twin brother James vanishes without a trace. James is a detective leading Cambridge's major crimes unit, and his wife begs John to impersonate his brother while they figure out what happened. John agrees. He figures he'll poke around James's office for a few days, look for clues. Instead, he immediately gets dragged to a murder scene and has to pretend he knows what he's doing. The show's trick is that John sees the world as puzzles, so the investigation sequences look completely different from anything else on television. The BBC scheduled it on a Wednesday night and apparently expected nothing, because they barely promoted it. It became the biggest new drama launch the BBC had in 2 years. Ended up going head-to-head with the Great British Bake Off for second place in the ratings. A plant scientist gets fired from her university job. She meets a recently divorced ex-cop, and the two of them start a gardening business together. But every single garden they work on turns up a corpse. Felicity Kendall plays Rosemary. You'd know her as Barbara from The Good Life. Pam Ferris plays Laura. She was Aunt Marge in Harry Potter. The two of them make the show. One's all academic sharpness, one's all warmth and police instincts, and together they bicker like old friends who've known each other for decades. Here's my favorite detail. The producer, Brian Eastman, created the whole thing to entertain his wife, who loved gardening. He made her a television series. ITV canceled it before a fourth season, even though the ratings were solid and people were watching. That decision still makes fans angry almost 20 years later. Henry Crabb has been a detective for 25 years and he wants out. He wants to open a restaurant. His boss refuses to let him retire because the boss built his whole career taking credit for Crabb's cases. So he blackmails Crabb into staying on. And now Crabb runs a restaurant and solves murders at the same time. Every episode splits between the two. There's a crime plot and a kitchen crisis plot running side by side. Richard Griffiths plays Crabb, and the role was built for him. Nobody else could have done it. But there's lots of other familiar faces too. Just watch this show now and look at the background. There's Andy Serkis doing a bit part, Pete Michael Kitchen years before Foyle's War, Kelly Riley before Yellowstone, Julian Fellows before Downton Abbey. Just a parade of future stars wandering through a Sunday evening show about a fat cop, and nobody knew it at the time. Matilda Stone is a detective who moves back to her weird little hometown. Her three aunts, all crime novelists, keep showing up at her murder scenes to help investigate. They also keep trying to set her up on dates. The whole thing is narrated by Juliet Stevenson, and that voiceover is the best part. People compare it to Pushing Daisies, and that's right. There's a bigger mystery underneath. Matilda's mother disappeared when Matilda was a kid. She left behind 3 clues: a haiku written on a blackboard, a smoldering Bulgarian cigarette, and a single black feather. It's incredibly clever and intentionally over the top at times. They paid homage to old-school murder mystery novels but managed to add its own unique charm. Pearl Nolan runs an oyster restaurant in a tiny seaside town. She always wanted to be a police detective, but she got pregnant as a teenager and that ended that. Now her son's gone off to university, and she finally opens a detective agency on the side. The show feels different from other British cozies, and there's a reason. The producers wanted to add a Nordic noir edge, so they hired Norwegian director Øystein Carlsen to run it. He created Lilyhammer. So you've got this cozy English mystery with Scandinavian moodiness layered on top. Some people think it's fresh. Some people think it's confused. 3 series have been made, but the IMDb score sits at 6.7, and that split reaction probably explains why. A detective screws up a hostage rescue badly enough to end her career in serious crimes. She gets reassigned to run a new cold case unit with 3 cops who've been forced into retirement. There's a widower, a guy with OCD who left after a breakdown, and a rogue who quit before he could be fired for punching his boss. The show runs on the friction between their old-school methods and modern policing. They ignore rules, follow gut feelings, and annoy every other cop in the building. Dennis Waterman was the only lead actor who lasted all 12 series. The other original cast left one by one. When they were gone, ratings dropped from 8 million to under 6 million per episode. The chemistry had been the show. Take it away and there wasn't anything left to watch. Susan Ryland is a book editor. Her most successful author is also her most difficult, a man who writes old-fashioned murder mysteries set in 1950s English villages. He sends her his final manuscript. The last chapter is missing. Then he turns up dead at the bottom of a tower and the police call it suicide. Susan realizes that the murders in the book match real crimes. To find out what happened to her author, she has to solve the fictional case first. The show cuts between the 2 timelines, and the same actors play different characters in each one. Leslie Manville plays Susan. You'd know her from Phantom Thread or as Princess Margaret in The Crown. Anthony Horowitz wrote it, adapting his own novel. Horowitz wrote episodes of Poirot and created Foyle's War. So this is a mystery writer making a show about a mystery writer who secretly hates the genre that made him famous.